IVM.
We would like to thank Storytel for sponsoring this show. Storytel is an audiobook platform that lets you hear hundreds of thousands of stories on your mobile, on your PC, wherever you prefer. You can get a great deal by signing up at the URL storytel.com/IVM. So this week I'm going to recommend Watership Down by Richard Adams. It's a quirky book. It's the story of a group of rabbits, how they face the destruction of their den and subsequent escape and journey to their new home. It's funny, it's heartwarming, really cool. It's basically Exodus with rabbits. I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't read it before, and let me tell you a little bit about where you can go get it. Go get it at storytel.com/IVM, and you know what will happen? If you go and sign up on this link, you'll get your first month for just 99 rupees a month instead of $299. That's $200 off. Go get this book right now. You'll really enjoy it.
Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing: the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, said Viktor Frankl, who was an Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, philosopher, Holocaust survivor, and the author of this world-famous book, Man's Search for Meaning. You might have heard me quoting him multiple times by now. I'm starting today's episode on this note as our guest has a similar kind of story to share. He has lived through a devastating tsunami in Chennai, survived a 7.2 magnitude earthquake in Philippines, and after all this, decided to overcome his fear of heights with a 150 feet bungee jump in Queenstown, New Zealand. Incredible. Welcome to Absolutely Right, the very first graphology-based podcast show in India. I'm your host Aditi Surana. I am a graphologist and a high-performance coach. Like always, today I will be analyzing the handwriting of one more interesting leader, pathbreaker, who believes in out-creating himself and his limitations every now and then. Vikram Cotah is a Chief Operating Officer at GRT Hotels, food stylist, biohacker, model, actor, speaker, and an author of his new book, Mojo in a Mango Tree, Lessons from Hospitality for New Age Leaders. Vikram has conceptualized several award-winning hotels and restaurants. From childhood memories to leadership conflicts post-lockdown in his hospitality industry, we delve into a lot of things. In our segment Autograph Please, I have commented on Vikram's signature. Signatures represent public image, how we project ourselves in the social or formal setting. In this segment, I decode Vikram's signature and speak about how he is often misunderstood by people around him. You can imagine a valuable insight for a leader. Have you observed signatures yourself? Do you also wonder why some people turn into abstract artists like Picasso while signing their official documents? On the other side of this short break, I will dive into the Graphology tool of the week, where I will be talking about the signature that has some form of encircling, cover-up, that talks about all the information that you're trying to conceal. Stay tuned.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you haven't been following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Storytel and The Whole Truth Foods. Thank you for supporting us. So a great bunch of episodes this week. First, let me tell you about The Note with Maruk Inayat. It was featuring Asaduddin Owaisi. She spoke to the AIMIM leader to understand what the Indian Muslim voter wants and how his party is any different from the BJP. On Advertising is Dead, Varun spoke with Malika Sadani. Malika is the founder and CEO of the Moms Company. They discussed the science of motherhood. On Naan Curry with Sadaf and Archit, Dhananjay Chuck of the Edges and Sledges podcast showed up, so we did another crossover, this time with food and cricket. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ritasha and Ayushi talked to Gaurang Sangvi, head of digital business at DSP Mutual Fund. The episode has some logical and realistic advice, especially for millennials, on how to invest their money. Shunya One is back this week with Sheila Aditya and myself. We spoke to Anirudh Singla of Pepper Content this week. Really interesting conversation. Anirudh gave us some real deep insights into content creation and how they're thinking about different ways of creating it. Do check them out. Really fun show, really fun conversation. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Hi Vikram, welcome to the show.
Hi Aditi, nice to see you.
Likewise. Now, I have your handwriting sample in front of me, and without wasting any time, I'm going to jump in and talk about some aspects that I find right away. I'm first thing that stands
out... I'm also scared.
I would say as you should be.
Okay.
So as I look at your handwriting, one thing that comes to my mind as the first thing is your ability to evaluate information. You walk into any room, any situation, and you quickly analyze things for what they are, black and white. And sometimes people wonder, how do you do that so quickly, how you manage to do that so quickly? But that is because you are evaluative, you're highly analytical. I've spoken about this trait in our previous episode, but when somebody writes their letters with angular formation, so when you write your letter M, it has that angular formation. All of them are like little pointed mountains there. When that formation is prevalent in anybody's writing, it talks about how this person is evaluative, analytical, and constantly gathering information.
Yeah, I think most of the time I realize that this is very true, because people generally, when I walk into meetings, I'm able to gauge the mood of the people, and I'm able to actually preempt of what's going to happen in the meeting. So people are sometimes wondering whether I have some other information, how did I come into the room and make out. But I guess I'm able to get this because for a long time I had this kind of a vision where when I go in and I see something, I'm able to see all the details which some of the other people are not able to see. And I think it's one of the traits of a hotelier that we are so picky and we are so very clued to details. So I'm able to pick up more than the inanimate cues. I'm able to pick up cues from people's emotions. So
Sure.
I think what you're saying is absolutely true.
So when that happens, your connection with the team is much deeper. So you must have seen that people come back to meet you, visit you after many years of working with you, or after having left the organization that you represent, just to connect with you on a human level, on a personal level, because what they learn being with you generally is a steeper learning curve than other experiences that they go through. Because you stretch yourself, you make sure that it's not only being receptive or perceptive of the situation, but the other aspect that I must talk about is your ability to execute things to the detail, to the T. So you would not see the gap and leave it. You will look at the gap and you see what can you do, how can you fix that problem, and you thrive in fixing problems.
Yeah, I love actually challenges, and most of hoteliers' work is through when we do every minute is a different thing in hotels. So you actually can't plan a day to the T. We have a very broad plan in when we are working in hotels, and we take it as it comes, because there are so many situations which come in. And we have to get into those details and we have to solve those problems. And as you know, the past decade, I think hotel is equal to uncertainty. I think we had so many disasters from 2001, where the WTC attack, and then we had the Taj terror attack, then we had the tsunami, and then we had the Chennai floods. And then we had the 2008 crash, and of course now the pandemic. So I think the hospitality industry, unless you're clued on and you enjoy working in the challenging spaces, it's not going to be enjoyable. And I enjoy my job, so I guess it's inbuilt in me that I enjoy these challenges. I'm glad that it is coming out through my handwriting.
Yeah, which also means it's part of your personality. So, how we talk about personality matching the profession. In your case, it is definitely matching your profession, because if you wouldn't have picked up this career, you would have been a problem solver in whichever field you would have chosen. So I'm happy for you that you picked this career where you have to do it every single day.
For your information, I picked my career when I was a 13-year-old boy. So I walked into a hotel, 5-star hotel one day, and then I said that this is what excites me. When I go into a hotel, I see these small details. I walked into a large lobby of a 5-star hotel to see an uncle, NRI uncle. And then I saw the entire vibe, the people dressed in suits and the ladies dressed in nice silk saris, and the guests drinking wine and eating good food with great cutlery. And the entire vibe was so good. I said that has to be my profession, because I knew that time that I will thrive in this environment, because I love this excitement, the dynamism of the entire place. and also the challenges it poses. I could see that people were having different situations in different pockets of the lobby, and yet it was looking as if it is one entire whole scene which was going on. So that's what excited me when I was a 13-year-old boy. And it made me do hotel management when it was not so popular during those days.
I believe
My
so.
father wanted me to become a doctor. You know, the narrative in maybe 20, 30 years back, the narrative was that you have to either become a doctor or an engineer to be successful.
Right.
To be
We grew
successful.
up in that generation where
Yeah.
every parent wanted their child to choose only one of these two options.
One of these two options. So I was also pushed towards it, but somehow my passion was so strong that I wanted to become a hotelier, that I made sure that I ran away from home. I went into college. I got inducted into a hotel management college in Bangalore.
Wow.
And I asked my grandmother to pay my fees. I told her that I will pay her back. And that's how I did my hotel management course and got into the Taj Hotel.
That's amazing. That's inspiring to even hear. Now, people do have clarity about what they want to do, but having the courage to support it and having the willingness and tenacity to see through that dream and that idea, I think that's really amazing.
And when you say now that I chose the right profession, it makes me so happy, because it's a kind of endorsement that what I chose was the correct one for me.
And I also want to bring back the conversation the point that we began the conversation with, where I said the angular formation, observation skills, and really looking at things for what they are. Now, even that 13-year-old Vikram knew about those aspects. He brought that exact observation skill, which now you ride on, thrive on, bring in different forms now. But even that time, it was the same skill, which is innate and given to you, and you are applying it. So I'm very happy for you, and I'm very happy for our listeners to get to hear one more story, which is so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So Vikram, over to you. What questions do you have for me?
So I just want to have a couple of questions. I just want to know now this so much of uncertainty, they're saying new normal, and everywhere people are unsettled, especially the hospitality industry is going through a lot of trouble. So sometimes what happens is that the entire team, they're thinking in different ways. I mean, they have their own pressures, work from home, and then salary cuts and furloughs, and a lot of these things are happening. So is there any specific way which I can deal with these problems and carry my team with my personality? Do you see anything in my handwriting which you feel that I should use it as a strength to get the team together to perform as a unit?
Okay, I think that's a great question. Now, I was talking about, I'm going to break it graphologically as I answer this, because there are so many beautiful nuances I can bring to this conversation here. Now, we have something called imaginary baseline, imaginary line on which we write. So we asked you to write on a blank sheet of paper, and that gives me the space to see where your handwriting is moving upward, downward, straight. Now, in your case, you have a combination of that, which means sometimes your handwriting goes upward and sometimes it goes straight. Last few lines in your sample, the handwriting is going up and down both together. Now, let me explain what it means. First part shows where the handwriting goes up, talks about enthusiasm that you bring to the table. So problem solving, picking up anything that is not working and making it functional. Again, as I mentioned, you thrive on that. Second part, where the baseline is straight, which talks about a focused approach to pick anything and go for it. Like a car racing driver, you just want to go to that final result right away. The third aspect is where the baseline shows that it is going up and down and up and down. Talks about a mind that is confused about where the solution should come from. Now, when you are unclear, it is almost impossible for you to deal with any team member, no matter how much you wish to be there for them. With lack of clarity, that is not possible. So let's take this first aspect, that you won't be able to have any clarity or complete or absolute clarity in the scenario like that. but you are beating yourself up for not having that clarity. So in terms of your personality aspect, it's not like forcing yourself to get the clarity will solve the problem, but rather accepting yourself, accepting this for you, that I won't have clarity for next 6 months might reduce the plight and the pain and the agony that you are experiencing right now, because it is getting to you. So from that unstable platform, guiding anyone else won't be available as a person. So first thing is, like, if you say that, okay, for this stipulated period of time, I'm just going to show up and deal with situation at hand the way things are going, the way you did in many, many situations. But because being the analytical person, you want to bring utmost clarity, and that is not happening. So you're not seeing the value that you're adding here. And this is where the inner conflict is coming to surface. So my request to you after seeing these aspects is, make sure that you allow yourself to be part of the team and not only be the leader who have all the solutions.
I think that's a very good advice you're giving. I think that also connects to my next thing, which I had in mind, that I'm a kind of a hyper person. I'm very anxious and I try to get things done very fast and I want to do it perfectly, and I believe in excellence. But sometimes in this team, especially nowadays, the present situation, I don't feel that all the members in the team are traveling together with me. So sometimes there are some guys who are lagging behind, and this makes me very anxious. They're not on the same wavelength which I'm thinking on. I'm trying to put back the business online, and we are trying to change the format of business. In hospitality now, the business hotels are down because there's no travel, but the leisure hotels are doing very well. So we are trying to see whether we can change our pattern of business where we get more leisure people, more domestic. We are trying to attract more domestic clients more than international clients. And we are also seeing whether we can do door delivery of food, door delivery of other services like housekeeping services, laundry services. But some of the people in the team, they're not open to change, which is really bothering me. So I was wondering, how do I look at this? Should I just be patient and take it slowly? Then I lose the race. I feel we will lose the race because there's a lot of competition coming around. Otherwise, what do I do? I mean, do I get new people on the team, or should I just inspire these people to reach up to that spot, or how do I deal with this?
Okay. Again, an amazing question, which is so loaded and has so many aspects to look at. Now, when we look at any personal leadership style, any person, standing there and getting the team together, he requires to look at situations in front of him and look at how can he go around them instead of always fighting them. Now, let me talk about impatience as a behavioral aspect. What is impatience? Whatever will happen tomorrow, I want to make sure that I'm prepared, I'm ready for that problem, that challenge, that opportunity right away. And if I do not do according to me, whatever I think is right, correct, required, must, right away, then I will miss that bus tomorrow. It's literally believing that if I don't walk these 2 steps and if all my team does not walk it with me, then we are gone, we are doomed. So the actual messaging, the actual conversation in your mind is about how things may go wrong, how things will not work. And if they don't fight this, if they don't wake up and if they don't go about it, then we are gone, which could be a reality. I am not denying that. We are in a situation where this is happening and many hotels are kind of struggling with that situation. So your fear is valid. But as a leader, when you use fear to lead someone, it becomes the stick approach. It becomes that constant nagging approach. It becomes somebody sitting on your throat or on your back and trying to push a decision, and you're doing it for everybody's good. But unfortunately, if it is done in the manner that it is being done, the results are not what you would desire them to be. If the same thing would have happened without having this cutthroat deadline or situation in front of you, probably you would have dealt with it in a different manner. So Vikram, my question to you is, if it were not for this calamity, how you would have dealt with this situation according to you?
See, generally, if it is not for this urgency of, and there's such a big change which is happening today, I would carry the entire team. I know all fingers are not the same size. So I know similarly that all my staff are not having the similar skill sets, or their maturity levels are not similar at all levels. So what I always do is I will play to the strengths of each staff. So I will pick up a team member and I will study him completely. I know what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and I will match him with a person with similar strengths so that they form a very strong team and they can take that particular project which I give them forward. But this takes a little time. That means it takes time to study the people. It takes time to put them in teams together. It takes time to find out what are the weaknesses of other person and complement it with some other person's strengths. So all this takes time. In good times, we can do this because there is enough time, and then the projects are not so time bound, and there is not so much of pressure on the revenues which are not coming in. The revenue streams have now all changed. Now with this big change, I feel like you said, that impatience. Maybe, it may still work, but we have not tried. It's only since September we are open, the hotels. So we are seeing things that it's a completely new scenario. It's like we are starting at ground zero and now we have to rebuild the entire thing. So that's when I'm getting a little anxious, saying, okay, if this is the scenario, we have to change fast. We have to make sure that all the forces work together, and then we have a common objective so that the outcomes are good. And this might last for a year or two. So we have to be prepared for that. So this is where my dilemma was. And I think, like you said, I think I'll have to take it slow and make sure that I go back to my pre-COVID way of leading people rather than hurrying things up.
So pre-COVID times had that time on your hand, but at the same time, you were more relaxed. So probably what you really need to work on is, though you're walking into this battlefield, a commander requires that level of calmness and firmness. Even if you know that the battle may or may not be won, you have to carry out your operations. Now you're doing everything, but not being firm or calm in the situation right now. I am requesting in both your questions that you really require to probably go back to your drawing board or go back to your notepad and figure out what is your clarity for next 3 months, not for next 1 year, because we won't have that, but just for next 3 months, and see how you can bring that clarity and make it very, very clear to your team and keep looking at it as a battlefield. I think that perspective by itself will become really, really helpful.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying is correct, because I also feel that I'm a kind of now in the present situation, I'm kind of trying to control everything. And I know that we can't control everything, and nothing is in our control. On your own. Yeah. Oh, really? Does it come to? Okay. I realize that I'm trying to control too many things, and I know that we cannot control, and it has to happen as it happens. So I'm trying to work on that also and see whether I'm not becoming a control freak because of that anxiety to make sure that the hotels or the brand which we built for so many years, 15, 20 years, continues in the same pace. We're also doing new hotels, and there is also pressure on getting these hotels ready in the present scenario. There is the migrant workers are not there. So all have gone back. So we are working with very small teams. The same work which was being done with larger teams, it's trying to accomplish with smaller teams. So I guess, I think all this adds up to this entire situation.
Whichever way we look at it, it's not easy for sure. It is a battlefield, and keeping all these moving parts in mind, it is really, really tough. But I'm reminded of one of the sentences I learned from my teacher. He used to say that being in control requires you to be calmer. Being controlling is where we get hyper, and controlling is about pre-deciding other people's actions and the results that may carry. And being in control is being willing to play with the uncertainty.
I think very well said. I think that's a good advice your teacher has given. And I think I should try and sit back and relax and look at things more clearly and with clarity rather than think too far ahead.
Great.
Yeah.
Next question, please.
Yeah, I have another question, which is more a question about parenting. So I don't know whether that comes out in my personality or not. So like I told you earlier, I grew up with my grandmother.
Okay.
Because my father used to work in quite remote places. He was in charge of the materials in large projects like dams and things like that. So obviously these dams are all in very remote places. So there was no education there. There was no schooling there. So for consistency of schooling, we grew up with my grandmother. So at that time, I was very disappointed with my parents because I felt they kind of abandoned me. I didn't get their guidance and stuff like that. So maybe that has a deep rooted kind of psyche in my psyche. And today I'm overbearing. I'm trying to compensate that with my daughter. And I'm trying to do everything more for my daughter, which she hates it. So again, I think it's a problem of being able to tell her that I'm there for you in everything, but she doesn't want that to happen.
Sure.
So do you have a solution for that and how to get over that?
So first thing first, when it comes to how much involvement should I show and how much control should I take, there is a slight difference. So when it is about involvement, it's being there for the other person. When it's about controlling the situation so that she won't suffer, she won't fall, she won't, go through something that you don't want her to, is being in charge of all the uncertainty that you cannot control. And thereby you'll end up limiting her and you realize it. But that whole fear. So it's not about the action. The same action done from a space where you want to encourage her is different. But when the same action is done from fear, so I always say this to my clients that it's the motive behind the actions that decide the experience of the action. It's not always, and especially in relationships, it's so important. And last week we dropped this episode on love language, and that's applicable to any relationship. We spoke about couples, but it's applicable to any relationship. So knowing what is the love language of the other person and speaking to them in the manner they want to be understood requires us to step out of our story. And with the kind of impatience that you show in your handwriting, it also brings in temper. So you do it out of concern, but when you land up communicating it, you sound temperamental. You snap, you kind of do it in a manner that you're not angry, but you just snap so that the person is scared enough to just follow your instructions so that you can move forward and avoid the problem. So if she has to go through her journey, she has to go through that journey. And no matter what you try, she will go through it. So I think that is, I think we have spoken about it. I don't want to bring in one more angle to speak about controlling. I think we have covered that one. Okay.
So I also feel that the millennial mindset is very different from the earlier generation. And I think they think very differently and their aspirations are very different. So I guess we need to understand millennials. When you're also in the workforce, I think 80% of our workforce in hotels are now millennials. So we are able to understand them better. They look at the whole world. They want to change and they want to have fairness everywhere. And they are very idealistic and stuff like that. So I guess we need to get used to the working with this new millennial workforce. And I think we need to also work on our own personalities because we have been dealing with people, another generation of people, maybe 10 years back. But today, what workforce we are getting to work consistently is with these millennials. So I think it's a different workforce.
And Vikram, in our generation, fear worked, right? Our parents, our grandparents, they showcased fear, they sold fear, and we bought it. Now, with the kind of upbringing the new generation is going through, and I'm also speaking this from a graphological perspective, when I look at the handwritings of these kids, the amount of maturity they bring to the table, I otherwise 10 years ago used to find that in somebody's handwriting was 25 or 28. So they are mature, they have more clarity, they're kids, they have their innocence, they have their fancy, they have their tantrums, all of that. But at the same time, because of the exposure and the environment they're growing in, they also have more clarity. They also have clearer opinions. So the balance between their innocence and their stupidity and their intelligence and their, wisdom is something as a generation, older generation of our generation must look at and cherish, because they do have perspectives that are not available to us. So if we allow them to emerge, I also feel in handwritings, I've seen these patterns. When they say, I want to do this, many of them are also committed to do that. Because they're not driven by fear, and they're driven by their own inspiration. And now they have all the technology at their disposal. They keep figuring things out. So the hustle is stronger and the abilities are much higher. So it's fascinating to see this generation.
Yeah, very true. Because I think one is technology, and another one is the opportunities they get. I think the generation before did not get these kind of opportunities, which the present generation is seeing. And also the choices. I mean, the choices they can make are multifold compared to the previous generation choices. And this
and
is
thereby
making...
fear won't work. Sorry to interrupt you, but thereby fear won't work. Fear is to work in our generation, where we felt, if I don't get this, if I lose this job, where do I go? Here they know, they will apply for 5 jobs before they say anything to this job, right? So the only way to keep them engaged is to keep them inspired and keep the whole game of growing and learning on. So I think you must try that with your daughter.
Yeah, I think I should do that. I think I should do that. And also another point I want to add to this, in the workforces today, it makes it more challenging because it's so multi-generational. We still have the old timers, and now we have the millennials, and now you have the younger kids who are coming in. So there are 3 generations which are fighting for the same space, and who have different way of thinking. And it's up to the leader manage all 3 so that they show them the same goal and how they can all travel together to the same goal. So that's the challenge of leaders today.
That's why I call your work a battlefield. It's no less than that.
I think that's the correct word, the battlefield. I think I should use it more often. And we are at war.
Definitely. Yeah. True. Vikram, any other question for me before I move to the next segment, where I will talk about your signature in our segment called Autograph, Please?
Okay, I'm actually waiting to hear that. So let's move on to the next segment.
Sounds great. Okay. So you know how signatures we use only for our official reasons. Thereby we use them to represent ourselves in a certain formal setting. Now, interestingly, signatures give the information about how you behave when you walk into your office, when you walk out of your house, when you walk in any social or formal setting. Whereas handwriting talks about who you are in person, in private, with your family members, so the real self. And the gap is always, seen as a misunderstanding between who you are and who you are perceived by other people to be. Okay, so I'm going to talk about certain clear gaps there. The first thing is, people believe that when you get into a situation, you're very passionate and you're very emotional and you cannot let go of the projects without having done the best. Now, that is true. But as I said, as the first point, you're very logical and you have clear, picture of the data and the numbers and the logistics, all of that happening. So when they think that you're operating from passion, and when they make a pitch, when they want to explain something to you, new vendors, they'll gauge you to be this emotionally driven person. And they give you all the reasons which are about how nice things are and how beautiful they are, and all the things that would be appealing to an emotional person, which do not work for you because you're like, okay, give me the numbers, give me the data, give me the exact points. But because they don't see you like that, they keep talking in circles about things that are not appealing. And then they believe this person is very nice to talk to, but very difficult to be convinced.
Very true. I think it happens most of the time. In fact, yesterday I had a vendor who was trying to sell me the signature scents for our lobbies.
Okay.
So he was, like you said, he was going on about how beautiful it is and how people will enjoy and how you can have the coffee smell and how you can entice them to come into the restaurant with fresh bread smell. But all I wanted to know was, how much does it cost and how much does it cost per hour? How do you put it? And how do we know that so much scent would work for so many square feet? But he thought that I would be carried away with the peripheral benefits of making the scent get people into the restaurant or it'll attract them. But I was more concerned about how much it's going to cost at the end of the day and how do we work the entire thing into the SOP or the standard operating procedure of a hotel. Very true. What you said was very true.
Add-on point here. So when you're talking about your team not feeling that you're moving with that pace and all of that, is also because they still look at you as this passionate person. You do not bring in the logical clarity, though it's your fundamental process to look at everything. You don't bring it to the communication when you talk to them about a problem. You tell them why they should be doing it, and that remains your conversation. But if you bring in more data and more numbers and you make it about the situation instead of your approach to it, it would really work, because you will thrive, because that's your natural tendency to function from.
Thanks. I think that's a good tip. I think I should use it the next time and see how it works.
Yeah, and do tell me how it works.
Yeah, I'll give you feedback if it works.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you so much for joining us on the Absolutely Right show. And I must say that, the kind of vulnerability you brought in and speaking about different aspects, it is really amazing to see how at a leadership position, you're still willing to learn and take the conversation and your own journey to the next level. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you. I think it was a very learning for me. I think I never knew that graphology could actually give solutions to a lot of leadership challenges. And I think only today I know that a person's handwriting, and can handwriting change? I mean, can it change over time? And does it affect the personalities? How do you look at it?
So handwriting keeps changing every now and then, because handwriting has three parts. Some parts are permanent, like our, deep-rooted personality traits. Some are transient, which change over every 5 to 6 years. And some are temporary mood swings. Technically, graphology speaks about all of them. So when you say your handwriting is changing, it is representing. And if it is, an honest mirror, it should show all the changes that your handwriting and your mind is going through. So it does capture all of it fundamentally. But I believe what you're asking is, can we use handwriting to make changes in all the problems that we are talking about? The answer is yes. We call it graphotherapy. It's a specific way where you repeat certain strokes over and over again to reverse engineer. That's a very strong word to use for a psychological behavioral thing. But you can really recreate certain behavioral aspects with time-bound guaranteed results, which fascinates me to another level altogether.
Okay. That's very fascinating.
We make changes in the signatures and make changes in the handwriting to create those changes that we are talking about.
Okay. So that's very interesting to know that handwriting can change. Maybe I think it changes. It's something to do with neuroscience and how your mind is connected. And
exactly. It's called neuro pathways. You could end up creating new neuro pathways with new strokes that you practice. So it's a very mechanical process, but it works with a specific result. So yes, it does.
Fantastic. Very interesting. Very interesting. And one more question I had for you.
Yes.
I'm like a left-hander in most of my things.
Okay.
And I also do a lot of things in my right hand. So I used to write in my left when I was very young. And then in school, they changed my hand to right hand. So I can write both in my left and right. Obviously, I haven't been practicing writing with my left. but I can still do like all my racket games, and even if I have to pick up something, it's always my dominant hand is left, and the right hand maybe out of using it more often, and also maybe I can also do some work with my right hand. I'm kind of ambidextrous. Do you
Right.
think that will also affect handwriting, or will it also affect personality? How do you
So,
read this?
two aspects to it. Your handwriting is your brain writing. So, no matter how you look at it, technically on the paper, it does not talk about which hand you use to write. It's your brain writing. So, it talks about your personality from that perspective. But yes, the impact that you're talking about is definitely related to being forced to change your preference and being forced to use your not dominating hand to, make it dominate. Now, those things deal with lot of otherwise trauma and otherwise confusion. But I do not see that confusion very evident in your handwriting. So the way
Okay.
it was not done with abusive mechanisms.
No,
It was
not
done
at all. Yeah.
with a lot of persuasion. So I
Correct.
sense that it wasn't a traumatic experience for you. So I don't see a big shift because of that.
Okay. I think you're true. I think it was not at all traumatic, and I don't even remember it. This was what was told to me by my mother, that I used to write in my left when I started off, and then slowly the teachers in school persuaded me to write in my right. But I now can write in both my hands.
And they say
That's one.
ambidextrous people are more creative and logical at the same time because they can access both sides of the brain, which
Brain.
research is still in dispute. So that's why I didn't mention that, because the whole right brain, left brain research is constantly being, refuted by people. So that's why I didn't mention that point. But yes, graphology talks about brain writing. So what I see is not necessarily a conflicting space here.
Good, great. I think it was a great conversation, and I think I learned a lot. Thank you
Likewise.
for this. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Vikram. Mystery, thrillers, or even detective novels thrive on the presence of an undercover agent, a person who is an active part of the narrative, but you cannot clearly define his personality. Someone who may know a lot about you, but you do not know much about him. The same analogy is applicable to our graphology tool of the week, signatures with some sort of encircling, a hood, or a cover, you may say. As I've been saying over and over again, signatures are poetic. Signature analysis is a world of its own. A stroke or two can reveal a lot of information, much more than one can fathom. When someone encircles a signature, or even a part of it, then without their knowledge, they're trying to keep some information about their personal or professional life concealed. It works as a protective shield when they walk into vulnerable situations. We can compare it with, say, a sunscreen lotion, PE suit, COVID mask, or even ghungat or burqa. In all these varied situations, a cover or a shield is needed to survive in that social, emotional, or physical situation. A similar thought is applicable when it comes to the signature with encircling, like a cocoon. I've heard people judging this trait negatively. They make blatant remarks like, "Oh my, trying to hide something, huh? This person is not good. This is a bad signature, I tell you." Before we judge anybody, let's take a moment to understand why this writer does this encircling. That simple stroke represents the barrier the writer wishes to build. It's a psychological protective wall that keeps other people's judgments and criticism at bay. This writer is hiding something from the world. Hiding is needed as showing up is painful. Cover up is required as the rejection and dejection is hurtful. The psychological barrier represented in signature actually talks about deeper concerns like things he or she is insecure about or uncomfortable with. Before you judge anyone, let me remind you the famous line by poet Charles Bukowski: "The empty, the angry, the lonely, the tricked. We are all museums of fear." If you or anyone you know has this encircling stroke in their signature, then remember, talking to people about your deepest, darkest problem is not your easiest thing to do. So make sure that you use handwritten journaling. You cannot keep all these emotions inside, they become toxic. Finding an outlet is crucial. How to journal, you ask? It's simple. Take a rule book, a ballpoint pen, and write down this question I'm about to ask you, and then pen down all your thoughts. By that I mean all of them. Do not edit, filter, or rationalize anything when you're writing. Don't even try to make sense of it. Just write. Let the physical action of writing be your mode of expression. The journaling question is, what is my fear, insecurity, or baggage behind building all these barriers or walls in every relationship? You can do that super effective, calming graphotherapy stroke called flow of thoughts for one page before you actually start writing your response. Our regular listeners already know what I'm referring to, but if you're new here, then go ahead and download this journaling worksheet PDF from aditisurana.com/podcast. It has all the explanation about the stroke of graphotherapy that I just mentioned. As announced earlier, from 12th of February onwards, we will be doing special couple analysis session. Enroll for them now to decode and understand the reasons behind all your fights with your husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, or partner. Our new Graphology Masterclass batches start on the first Saturday of every month. This one power-packed course will help you understand yourself and people around you in ways you cannot imagine. Check the details on my website for the next two batches that start on 6th of Feb and 6th of March. If you like this podcast, then don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on IVM Network. You can listen to us on IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Let's connect on Friday with one more episode on relationship. Till then, happy writing!
Feeling overwhelmed, anxious, struggling with too many obstacles, don't know where your life is headed? Well, if you are dealing with one or all of these, tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast, because in each episode, I share a life lesson, a life hack, a pro tip that can help you get your life back on track. All episodes are available on the IBM website, IBM Podcast app, or wherever it is that you get your podcast from.
Want to learn something new and have a few minutes to spare? Well, then go for the Traveling Professor's Diary, where I, Siddharth Deshmukh, the Traveling Professor, will help you glean from all the insights that I've gained from wherever I've traveled, learned, taught, and repeated. Join me every Tuesday and Thursday on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.